In this video, we want to look at some issues in operations. Just pick some of the many issues and have a brief discussion of each of them. So it's a video of many topics. So let's start. Industries may face a shortage of employees. That's an issue for operations. A shortage of employees can be very damaging to a business, particularly employees of certain skill types. If it's an engineering business, they're going to require skilled workers, and there may be a shortage of skilled workers in particular areas for all sorts of reasons. So a shortage of employees is a major problem confronting the operations part of the business. There's also the need to improve productivity, and some measures to increase productivity may be resisted by the workers, who may see a quick fix for productivity problems is to get the workers to work harder. Well, that may not be the ideal solution. The ideal solution may be to introduce appropriate training and appropriate technology to enable the workers to produce more. And also bear in mind, as covered in other videos on this module, there is a problem about measuring productivity. It's not just simply taking outputs divided by inputs, because we have joint production. People work with machinery, so it's impossible to work out the productivity of one of the factors of production. It's impossible to work out the productivity of labour if they are working with a machine and the machine has just been upgraded, let's say. If the machine has just been upgraded, the workers look more productive. In fact, the workers are working the same as before. So there is a need to improve productivity. That's agreed. But the measurement of productivity may be problematic. And the measures taken to increase productivity need to be carefully considered. Industry may also face increased competition, particularly foreign competition. And foreign competition in a globalized world is to be expected. And different countries have different cost structures. Workers in one country are paid more than in another. So sometimes the imports are much cheaper, which means there is a problem for the business, the domestic business, to compete and to survive. But if it is to survive, then it must be innovative. It must ensure the buyers of the quality of its output and try to use capital efficiently so as to reduce costs and try to stay as competitive as possible vis-à-vis the external competition. So there is a need to embrace new technology. This, of course, means more training, more time dedicated to looking at the new technology and testing it and seeing its appropriateness. It's not just a question of going out to buy new technology. It has to do particular tasks. It has to represent good value for money as well within the business. So the choice of technology and the choice of production methods has to be carefully worked out to ensure that they are all aiming to produce the product, which is the core of the business's activity, to produce the product that can be sold at a reduced price with good quality. So new technology is also an issue to be considered by operations. Now, management, well, the responsibility for making and keeping the organisation competitive rests with management. That is the responsibility of management. It's to keep the organisation competitive, to keep it running smoothly, to avoid major issues and problems and breakdowns and issues with HR and so on. It's to try and produce a product that's desirable, that customers want, that represents good value for money, and one who responds to customer needs. So to that end, management must have a good marketing department that are aware of what's happening in the marketplace. The management must develop a business strategy, and the business strategy should be achievable. It should be carefully designed and carefully worked out and agreed amongst the various stakeholders of the business. It should be agreed, and it should represent something that can be done. It's feasible. But it gives the organisation a sense of purpose, a sense of direction. They now know where they're going and what they need to do. And strategic planning is long run. But the organisational side must also have plans which are derived from the strategic plan, showing how the strategic plan may be implemented, what measures should be taken at an operational level to support the strategic plan. So the business strategy provides direction and vision, as I've said. It also guides short and long-term decisions. The long-term decisions from the strategic plan, and the short-term from the more operational type planning. It can deal with the international competition we talked about earlier. It may directly confront the international competition, look at their products and look at the prices charged and the distribution methods and the customer care and aftercare service that are offered, and try to develop policies which will deal with that and which will enable the business to confront, if you like, the international competition and beat it. The function of management is also to ensure that all the functional areas and business's process support the business strategy. It's important that all of the business are committed to achieving the outcomes of the desired outcomes of the business strategy. So all the various departments should be pulling together. There should be a cohesion amongst them. There should be negotiations and discussions and regular meetings, all supporting the agreed strategic plan. And the strategic plan is to bring the organisation into a certain position, the position of perhaps market leader. The business strategy, well, it's a set of well-defined objectives, plans and policies for the organisation to successfully compete in its markets, both domestic and global. So the idea of the strategic plan is to develop products that are desired by the customer, they're at the right price, they have got the right aftercare service, the proper customer support. These are desirable products and they represent good value for money from the customer's perspective. And that's the objective of the business, let's say. So it should be able to develop coherence within its own four walls. It should be able to develop coherence between the various departments, all aiming to try and achieve the strategic plan. Business strategy needs to be divided into functional strategies that are aligned and supported that are aligned and support the overall business strategy. So the various functional plans, the plan of the production department, the plan for the stores, the plan for distribution, the plan for the marketing plan itself, all of these various plans should all be contributing towards the achievement of the overall strategic plan. So the strategic plan is the overall direction of the business and what the stakeholders want. The functional plans are all contributing towards the achievement of that plan. Now, global competitiveness, well, that's important for the long-term viability of the business. If it's not globally competitive, it will go out of business. It must take on the competition, the global competition, because we live in a global world, a world where products flow freely almost between countries around the world. So long-term viability of the business is important. And the way for it to get long-term viability is to take on global competitiveness, global competition, I should say, and beat it. Beat it in terms of quality, reputation, image, price, delivery, aftercare service. Short-term success in terms of market share or profitability is also important. It's important that the business has got good profitability in the short term, as well as, of course, in the long term. But in the short term, it must have profitability, and that will ensure that it has got a good cash flow situation. It doesn't get into problems with cash flow. So good management of financial resources is important. Of course, global competitiveness is influenced by the exchange rate, which is out of the hands of business. Business can do nothing about the exchange rate. The exchange rate is determined through the supply and demand for currencies. A strong currency means that exports become more expensive and imports become cheaper. So a strong currency is not necessarily desirable. Companies might actually want a weak currency. A weak currency means that imports are expensive and exports become cheaper, and that's to the advantage of the business. Now, there are three major trading regions we can identify, and there are more coming up as time goes by. There's Asia, of course, which has, in the last probably 20-25 years, made remarkable progress in terms of its development and its power in the world. And it's not just countries like China. In the past, it was Japan, but now we see South Korea, and right down in through Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand. Many countries are making significant inroads into what was in the past the exclusive preview of the West. Next we have Europe, still a major powerhouse in terms of economic clout. Many countries in Europe now are formed into the European Union, and it operates as one economic trading position in the world. So it has a single currency that cuts across many of its members, not all, but it has the power of many major economies within it, such as Germany and many other countries who are quite major players, Italy, France, and so on. So that's the second big area that we can identify. And then, of course, we have North America, America and Canada, and also their own agreement, the North American Free Trade Area, which includes Mexico. So countries seem to be coming together in blocks. Europe has come together in a block, and Asia is also coming together in a block through ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. North America with a relationship with Canada and with Mexico. These are the major trading blocks. We can envisage others, China, for example, which is already making a major impact and is now rated to be the second economy in the world, and is likely to go on probably to be the biggest economy in the world, simply because of its size and its population. But companies, even on an operational level, must be aware of where their products is going and the type of product that's most suitable to those areas. So there may be design changes required for different parts of the world. There may be different marketing strategies that are required for different parts of the world. And the company must be sensitive about cultural issues, about what is acceptable, not acceptable in terms of design, presentation, and so on. Now let's look at reasons to produce offshore, reasons to produce outside of the country. Well, some businesses may wish to circumvent government regulations. Doesn't sound very good. It doesn't sound like a good reason to move production overseas. But some companies may find that there are too many rules or too many regulations in a particular country or in a particular region, and there's too much paperwork required, too much bureaucracy required to run the business, so they want to move. That's a possibility. But it doesn't sound like a very good reason to move. It sounds like the companies are running away from something. They could move overseas to avoid the effects of currency fluctuations. Now that's quite common. When companies set up a plant in another country, they don't have the problem of currency fluctuations. They're producing there. The only thing they have exported in many respects is the know-how, the information, the technical know-how to make the product, how to set up the production lines and how to produce the product. And they may form alliances with companies established in those other countries for distribution and marketing and so on. So it may be to avoid currency fluctuations, to avoid movements in the exchange rate which can adversely affect the amount of revenue that's received. Could be to avoid quotas and tariff fees as well. Sometimes companies are exporting to a country and they have to pay tariffs to get their products in, and they're also limited by the amount of goods they can take into the country. So sometimes to avoid that, the easiest thing to do is to open a plant in the country and start producing there. It could also be the case that they want to show themselves as loyal to the country to which they're exporting, and they appreciate the country they're exporting, so they want to have a good reputation, a good image there, so they open a plant and create employment, and they're now seen as a part of the infrastructure of that country. So it's good marketing on their part. It makes them look like they're a part of that society, and people living in that country will appreciate them and perhaps be more prone or more interested in acquiring their goods. Generating new product ideas. Well, research and development is the traditional way in which new product ideas were developed. Research and development is a very risky activity. There's no guarantee that new ideas will come out of research and development, but companies have to engage in it in the hope that they're going to find some new way of producing something or some innovative product, or they're going to get some commercial advantage, some return on the expenditure on research and development. There are two types of research. Just pure research. Pure research is working with basic technology to develop new knowledge. This normally happens at universities and research centres. Sometimes people do research just to find out relationships, physical relationships within materials or within production processes or whatever, just to find out what the relationships are so that they can publish their papers. And it's an academic process. It's not done so much for commercial reasons or commercial purposes. The more interesting one as far as business is concerned is applied research, which is attempting to develop new knowledge about existing processes. It's a form, if you like, of problem solving. It's trying to find solutions to problems, to develop new products, new ways of working. It's problem orientated, problem solving. It's more commercial. The first type, pure research, tends to be just done for research's sake, to find out what are the relationships between different variables. But with the applied research, there is a commercial payback, or a better chance of a commercial payback as a consequence of applied research. Development is the attempt to utilize the findings of research. So we say research and development. Well, research is one part. That's to try and find some new product or some new way of producing a product. And the development is the utilization of the findings from the research. So it's research and development. The development is putting it into practice. R&D relates to the application side and often consists of modifications or extensions of existing outputs. So research and development is often based on what is currently happening, and it's looking for improvements or modifications to what's currently happening to try and improve efficiency or bring out a new product to give the company a lead in the market, to give it a quasi-monopoly position perhaps for a limited period until other companies catch up with it. So research and development may be conducted for a variety of reasons. The alternatives to research, well, imitation of a proven idea. This is the second to market strategy. Second to market means some company comes up with a good idea, good product. The second to market, to take the original product of the competitor, they amend it, change it around slightly, and bring that to market. And this happens all the time. Car manufacturers come up with a good idea for a car, then it spreads throughout the car industry until nearly all the cars have got the same idea. It may look slightly different and be in a different position, but essentially it does the same thing. But you can see it in many, many products, not just cars, household items, in many areas. So second to market is a possible strategy. It may be the case that a company simply purchases somebody's idea. Somebody comes up with a good idea and they go to the company and say, I've got a good idea, would you like to buy it? And that may be where the idea originates, not from research and development, simply the purchase of an idea that somebody has come up with. We could also consider something called disruptive technologies. The impact of the web, for example, on business processes and online shopping. It can be disruptive. It can distort what was a stable market. Bricks and mortar trading. People went to shops and bought products. Now they may shop online. So it's disruptive. It's changing the world in which we live. It's changing the way we buy, and it's changing the way we live. So it's disruptive technology. But of course it's also advantageous to the people who engage in it. They're getting the products perhaps cheaper, they're getting better service, more information about the product, and so on. It happens in e-learning as well. People learn from videos. Surprise, surprise. People could learn from reading on the web, reading articles related to particular topics, do research on the web. They don't have to go to libraries, they don't have to go to colleges, traditional colleges. They may have instructions online and follow courses online, which may come as a surprise. There's also e-communications, which is disruptive. In the past, letters were posted and delivered by postmen and postwomen. Now an email may be sent, and the email may have attachments which may be considerable size, photographs, videos, attachments which were not possible with traditional posting arrangements. So there's e-communications, which again is disruptive. It has changed the way we live. There's the use of databases and production scheduling. We have much more information stored about us, and we also store information about others. We store web addresses, and we store information about products, and we can cut and paste, and we have our own little databases of what we're interested in. So again, it's disruptive. Commercialization, well, moving an idea from concept to market is the idea of commercialization. That's what commercialization is. It's moving from an idea to the market, to selling the product on the market. There's shorter life cycles. shorter life cycles because people are looking for more experiences. They're looking for more experiences. They're looking for better products. Fashions change faster. They're interested in different things. So the life cycle of products tends to be shorter. Products don't seem to last as many years or the same duration as in the past. There's increasingly competitive marketplaces because there's more information about products available online, for example. So products can be researched and prices can be researched, and so there's more competitive behavior now than in the past. In the past, customers may suffer from some sort of ignorance of the price. There was spatial problems about where the product was available. It may be available a long way away, and that means the price could be quite significantly higher than perhaps in urban areas. So we have more information, and this leads to greater competition. Of course, it's globalization. We now know more about different parts of the world than we've ever done because of better communications channels. But better communications channels also means that customers are better informed about products and prices of products and the availability of products. And we know what's happening in different parts of the world, what they're working on, what sort of products they're making. We're more aware. So there's a difference again in the world. Now, measures of commercialization capabilities. Well, one measure is the time it takes to get to market. If someone comes up with an idea, how long does it take before the product can be sold in the marketplace? And with changing technologies and with more information, the time to market tends to have shortened. And that's exactly what, of course, business want. They don't want to have resources tied up for a long period of time trying to get the product to market. They want to get it to market as quickly as possible. There's a wide range of markets, and the type of market selected is important. Where should the product be launched? What complementary products should go with the product? Should the company develop a range of complementary goods? What are the attributes of the markets? And do markets vary across the country? Do they vary from one country to the next? What are customer expectations within the markets? The number of markets, of course, is also important. The more markets that exist, the chances are the more competitive the economy will be. But also companies will experience more competition because there are more markets and more better informed consumers. The breadth of technologies is also important. It may be that a product can be made in a variety of ways using various technologies. So it's for management to work out what is the best technology, what is the best way of making the product, given that there are a variety of technologies available that can be used to produce the item. So improving measures of commercialization, well, make commercialization a top priority. Businesses presumably will be doing that, but some businesses may become complacent, particularly businesses who have had a relative monopoly in an area. They may have sat back and enjoyed the fruits of their monopoly position, but they will be challenged. That's the way the world is. As information passes around the markets, competitors will penetrate that market. So making commercialization a top priority is important. If an idea exists, then test it out to see if it can be commercialized. It's important to set goals and benchmarks to assess progress. Otherwise, again, complacency can hit the company. The company can drift along. But if it's got goals and benchmarks which are realistic, then it will work to try and achieve those. Building cross-functional teams is important because information flows between the various members of the team, and a more balanced view of product development can be worked out. Having cross-functional teams means perhaps having an engineer, a marketing person, a HR person, somebody from distribution, somebody from accounts, and so on. Having this team put together so that they can look at ideas under development from various perspectives and make contributions. And that's far better than having one section develop an idea and then bring it to the next section, only to find it's been criticized at the next section because it didn't take in something into account. So it's better to have cross-functional teams right from the start, making contributions and criticisms right from the start so that the product moves and it's been developed on various fronts. It moves through the development stages and it's being developed on various fronts. It's important to have hands-on management. Management should not be aloof. When an idea in particular comes before the management, they should be involved with it. They shouldn't delegate it and just leave it and hope that somebody is going to develop it within the organization and it'll eventually make profits for them. Management needs to have hands-on. It needs to be involved. It needs to champion the idea and bring the idea forward. Now, the transformation process characteristics, well, 6 primary characteristics of the transformation system. First of all, efficiency. In transforming ideas into products, or indeed transforming existing products into slightly varied products, in products which have been innovated to some extent, it's important that efficiency rules the roost. It's important that efficiency is high on the agenda, that it's done efficiently, that it's just not sort of developed haphazardly and allowed to sit and wait and get some more initiative later and develop a bit further down the line. It's important that it's done efficiently and progressed efficiently. And it should be effective as well. Effective is different from efficiency. Effective means it should achieve what is expected of it. So if an idea is aimed at doing something, at improving perhaps some element of production, then it should be effective. It should actually lead to the improvements that were expected. So it should be an effective development. So moving an idea into practice should be both efficient and effective. It should do what it says it's going to do, but should do it efficiently. There should be capacity as well to enable transformation processes to take place. If there isn't the capacity to do it, it won't happen. It's as simple as that. If the business hasn't got the capacity to do it, the resources to do it, or the shop floor area to do it, or the machinery to do it, or the people to do it, then it will not happen. So the business must have the capacity. So the transformation process, changing something, should be done efficiently, it should be effective, it should achieve what it says it's going to achieve, so it should be effective, and it should be capable of being done. The business should have the capacity to do it. And all the time, quality should be controlled. Quality is at the center of production in today's world. There's more emphasis on quality over the last 20 years than probably all of manufacturing before that. There is greater and greater emphasis on quality, and customers expect quality. Also, the response time should be looked at. The response time in terms of, let's say, feedback on how well the transformation has taken place. Response time in terms of perhaps indicators that were set up to monitor the transformation process. And if a red flag is raised because there is a breakdown somewhere in the transformation process, that should be dealt with efficiently and effectively. Finally, there should be flexibility. It's a transformation process, but as far as possible, the management should look at the implementation of the whole transformation process in a flexible way. They should be able to make sure that it's not disruptive or damaging to other successful parts of the business. It should be able to fit in with the other practices within the business, and if it's a new product, that it does not disrupt other successful products that are currently under production. So it's possible for it to be flexible, that it can be scaled, it can be stepped up or stepped down as the case may be. Certainly, if it's a new product that's been introduced, in the early stages of the product life cycle, not much of the product will be required because customers don't know it. But if it goes into maturity, into the maturity stage of the life cycle, then it may be there may be significant sales, and the business will have to reorganize to ensure it's got capacity to enable this to happen. There's also supply chain management, which is an issue in operations. Looking at the cost of labour, for example, is an issue. Making sure that within the supply chain that there are no large items of cost that can distort the chain itself. So, for example, buying in raw materials from a supplier, the cost of the delivery and the cost of the raw materials may be affected by the cost of labour for that particular supplier, but the onus is on the business to ensure that it's got good knowledge of the market and of alternative suppliers, so that its own business is not adversely affected by what's happening in one of the suppliers. So as far as possible, the management should have backup, that if there is an escalation of costs in one supplier, then it's able to switch to another. And of course the onus is on that one supplier who is affected adversely by that escalation in cost. The onus is on that supplier to address that situation and ensure its own survival. There's also the cost of logistics, the cost of actually moving it, the cost of transportation, and the design of how to deliver the products. What's the most efficient method? What's the most efficient routes? And what sort of transport should be used? Should it be by rail or ship or plane or lorry? And which routes should be used? And what times are, what's the delivery time? And what are the delivery windows that are acceptable to customers? So looking at the logistics is also important, and the cost of the logistics. Total value chain of global production is very complicated and yet very important. With globalization, products are flowing from one side of the world to the other and still finding their way into domestic households. So the logistics of doing that and looking at the total value chain of the global production and solving the logistics is an immense task. The value chain starts with the raw materials, perhaps on the other side of the world, going to a company, looking at the value added within the company, the standard of management, the workforce, the skills, the capital, the technology that was used, and then the distribution system and how efficient that is to move the product from one side of the world to the other through the distribution system domestically, which may be warehouses or retailers or whatever, onto the final consumer. So thinking about it's an immense problem. but one that is obviously successfully dealt with, because we do have products coming from the other side of the world. There's also coordination. Markets are very good at coordinating. That's what markets do. They coordinate supply and demand. They coordinate the amount that's produced, and they give signals. Markets issue signals that there is excess production or not sufficient production. There's a shortage in the market. And the supply chain may have coordination issues throughout the whole supply chain, right from raw materials down to the final product. And the coordination may be flagged up through market signals almost. There may be shortages of raw materials in one area, perhaps an excess of raw materials for some items. The price of the raw materials may rise because of shortages. The product, as it flows through the production system, it may be difficult to work with because the product was not good standard, and there are many issues to be considered. But it's important that there's good coordination right throughout the system. Even if it's not using traditional market analysis like I've been talking about, it may be that it's just good, effective management, watching how the processes are being conducted to ensure that all the parts fit together smoothly to have continuous production. So we have information flows, flows from right throughout the organization, one manager to the next, to the shop floor, to the offices, to the relevant people, information flowing continuously. And also finding efficient suppliers, making sure that the suppliers can meet the requirements of the business and can deliver to the schedules that are agreed, so that there is efficiency in terms of the delivery. It's also a question of identifying and evaluating transportation options, making sure that the right transportation is used. Not just any transportation, but the right one. The right one being the one at minimum cost that also meets the promises that the organization has made in terms of delivery. And also, of course, minimizing breakages and minimizing problems that could be encountered in the delivery process. So it's a question of trying to find the right form of distribution. New technologies. Well, ERP is an acronym for Enterprise Resource Planning. It refers to the automation and integration of a company's core business to enable management to focus on the effectiveness of resource use. Now, what that means is that the management needs to know exactly what the core of the business is. What are the core competencies within the business? What are the people good at within the business? What products do they make? And then trying to find related products or perhaps variants of the products and find technologies that will enhance the core competencies. Simply because a company is good at doing something doesn't mean it should be complacent. It should still be looking for new technologies. It should still be looking for new ways of doing things. The various payment systems that have been developed and electronic communication methods to facilitate the exchange of data and commercial transactions, this has made a big improvement in terms of procurement and competitiveness. It's efficient to be able to move resources around very quickly and procure items perhaps online, but also perhaps pay the personnel by bank transfers. They don't have to go to the bank physically and collect cash and take it back to the bank, to the company, and pay the employees by putting money in an envelope. That has gone. So there are new technologies that are cutting right across all aspects of the business. And it's important that the companies embrace this new technology because this is the competitive environment in which they're working. Their competitors are doing it. So it's important that companies embrace it, learn it, use it, and in fact, if possible, lead the way. There's also, of course, barcoding, which is just almost an afterthought, but barcoding is important, particularly in management of stores and movement of goods throughout an organization. And the internet is everywhere. So use of intranets for communications within the business and internet for communications outside the business, communications tools such as video conferencing, and it means that the marketing personnel are still online. They've got the support of the business. They can call back quickly. Advent of technology such as mobile phones, or as Americans say, cell phones, these technologies have greatly improved efficiency in marketing when people are in the field. People meeting customers, customers have questions or queries. It's possible to get answers almost immediately. Just a quick phone call and the answer comes through. But also there are all sorts of possibilities for marketing the product online, producing images of the business which support the ethical basis of the business and support its claims for ethical production. It can project an image of itself which is very positive, which will enhance the marketing image. So new technologies are not just luxuries, these are now vital tools that businesses need to embrace if they're going to compete in an increasingly complex and globalized world. So what we've done in this session is we've looked at all sorts of ideas, each of them quite small in the way we've dealt with them. We've just introduced all sorts of ideas which are really issues related to the operations side of the business. Clearly there's an overlap. There's an overlap between strategic and operations. Ideally the operations should support the strategic planning completely, but there are issues that need to be separated out and looked at individually, such as new technologies, the ones on the screen at the moment. But it's important to go back over this session, make notes, run the video a few times, stop it, start it, go back again, make some more notes, do some extra reading, pad out your notes, because these issues are important. But that's all I'm going to deal with in this session, so I'm going to leave it at that and say thank you for watching.